All right, welcome everybody. I am Scott Guttentag from Dos Pueblos High School. I'm a counselor and the activities director. I want to thank you for joining us for our Preparing for Intercollegiate Athletics meeting for both parents and students. Before we get started, I'm going to make sure that our interpreters can explain how the operation works because the event is going to be happening in English and Spanish simultaneously. So if our interpreter can explain to the group how to hear correctly, that would be great.
Yes, good afternoon. In order to provide language access, we will be providing interpretation into Spanish. So I will go ahead and give the announcement in Spanish and then we can begin. Buenas tardes, esta reunión contará con interpretación simultánea en español. Si usted es bilingüe, no tiene que presionar nada. Si usted no es bilingüe, tendrá que elegir su idioma para escuchar la interpretación. Si está usando una computadora, verá un icono en la parte inferior de su pantalla a la derecha en forma de globo que dice interpretación o interpretation. Haga clic allí y seleccione español o Spanish. Si está usando un iPad o un teléfono, localice el menú de 3 puntos arriba, haga clic en interpretación de idiomas y elija español. Gracias. Thank you. You may now assign me as your second interpreter, Mr. Spencer. Thank you.
Okay, and it's my understanding that everybody needs to go to the globe and on the bottom right where it says interpretation, and you need to select either English or Spanish.
Correct.
Martha and Anna, if you could assign each other to that interpreter role. Since I'm presenting on the screen, I'm not able to change that.
Okay, so everybody knows who's here tonight. Like I said, I'm Scott Guttentag. I'm a counselor and activities director at Dos Pueblos High School. This event is being put on tonight by Dos Pueblos, Santa Barbara, and San Marcos High Schools all together as a team. So we are also joined by Spencer Barr from Santa Barbara High and Lisa Howard from San Marcos. We will be all helping with answering the questions that you have. We're going to be asking that you hold off on your questions till the end of the presentation, as we believe that most of your questions are going to be answered in the presentation. We are going to ask that you use the question and answer box and not the chat for your questions. So if you could please make sure that you do that when you do have questions. We will be holding a question and answer forum at the very end. So we'll be reading off the questions and announcing them. I also want to point out that this activity is being recorded and it will be available on our website for anybody to listen to. So if you can't stay for the whole thing, or whether or not someone that you know missed it, it will be on all 3 high school websites to be seen at any time after tonight. We are very lucky to have Joann Graham, our presenter tonight. She's been doing athletics at Santa Barbara City College for several years, and she has been our presenter for this event probably for over 10 years. I think she and I have been doing this. It's been a great combination of working together with our local school and stuff like that. So I really want to appreciate the fact that she is here tonight. She has a lot of great information that will answer almost all of your questions. Because you're going to have access to all of the slides, you do not need to worry about whether or not you missed information on the slides, because I said this entire slide presentation will be available on all of the websites at all of the schools. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our guest speaker tonight, Ms. Joann Graham. Thank you very much for coming, Joann.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. And normally I come to the local high schools every year and I get to see parents and student athletes at local high schools, which I prefer to Zoom, but I'm glad that we actually have this venue. So I'm going to go over what you need to do as a high school athlete if you want to go straight to a D1 or a D2 school. Also, a lot of you know about the promise, so you may decide to come to community college, get your first 2 years paid for, compete there, and then transfer to a D1, D2, D3 school. So I'll go over those requirements a little bit at the end as well. And like Scott said, I am the counselor for student athletes at Santa Barbara City College. So I work with every single student athlete. So whatever their goal is, you want to transfer as a regular student, you want to transfer as an athlete, I know all the NC2A rules really well about transferring from a junior college to a four-year school. And your high school counselors are going to be the ones that you need to meet with regularly as a student athlete to make sure that you can do that transfer to a D1 or D2 school if you happen to come to City College first. So, okay, next slide. All right, so this is going to be on the slide with Division I. So the NC2A has Division I, Division II, and Division III sports. Men's sports, cross country, football, soccer, water polo are in the fall. Women's fall sports are cross country, field hockey, soccer, and volleyball. Winter sports at Santa Barbara City College, we only have fall and spring, but D1, D2, and D3 have usually fall, winter, and spring sports. Anyway, this slide will be on we just moved at Santa Barbara City College. Women's basketball and men's basketball is now a spring sport, but it looks like it's still a winter sport for D1, D2, and D3. Okay, Spencer. So the differences between the divisions, Division I, you can get a full to a partial scholarship. 58% of students receive athletic aid. Division II can only give partial athletic scholarships. And Division III, there are no athletic scholarships, but the majority of student athletes can receive merit-based aid. All schools, D1, D2, D3, except FAFSA. So hopefully you get, federal aid. So that's a lot of times how coaches put something together. You got a partial athletic, you got a merit, you've got a little bit, of financial aid from FAFSA. And that's how they put a package together for student athletes. Okay. All right, so the NC2A eligibility rules. Again, I'm Joann Graham. I'm a counselor for Santa Barbara City College. And these are going to be the steps you want to take to participate in Division I or D2 athletics. All right, so the NC2A, it stands for the National Collegiate Athletic Association. And they have an eligibility center that determines whether your student athlete is eligible to compete right out of high school to go to a D1 or a D2 school. They're the ones that make that decision. It's the NC2A, it's the eligibility center that determines that. You could be the greatest athlete in the world, but if you don't do what you need to do academically in high school, you won't be able to compete at a D1 or a D2 school. So if you want to participate in college sports at a D1 or D2 university, then you have to register with the Eligibility Center. You can go to www.ncaa.org and it'll give you instructions how to fill it out. The NC2A, right now, we say take the SAT and the ACT, even if you're going to a community college. Last year, we're gonna talk about this later, but last year that wasn't part of the requirements because students couldn't take an SAT or an ACT. We don't know what's gonna happen in 2021 yet. Students might be able to if you're a junior. We don't know what's gonna happen by May or June. You may be able to, and the NC2A actually hasn't ruled on that yet. Okay, next slide. All right, so the differences are in Division I, you have 5 years to play 4 times. So any full-time enrollment triggers your 5-year clock. So you only have 5 years to play 4 times. If you, there are exceptions. If you join the military, one-time pregnancy exception for women, or a religious mission. So we actually did have an athlete that came to Santa Barbara City College and he went on a mission trip. He was Mormon and he competed for us for 1 year and then left for 2 years and then came back. His clock, they gave him his entire 5-year clock back. So it can stop. The 4-year school is the one that would petition that. But the main thing to know is you have 5 years to play 4 times. So if you're a student, anytime you're a full-time student, so we've had this happen before, kids from Santa Barbara, like, I just need to get out of here. I'm going to ASU. They get to ASU, they spend 1 semester there, realize how much they miss football. They come back to Santa Barbara City College to play, and I have to be the bearer of bad news and tell them, well, your clock started. Your clock started when you were a full-time student at ASU, even if you weren't ever going to make their team. So just keep that in mind when your student says, I want to go away and I'm not going to compete anymore. A lot of times they miss their sport. So, so 5 years to play 4 times. Okay, next slide. So Division II is slightly different. You have 10 semesters of full-time. 10 semesters is actually still 5 years, but you can under-enroll and not be a full-time student to stop and start your clock. So that would stop and start your clock at a D2 school. Okay. All right. So now this is for high school students. You need to start planning now to play at a 4-year school. You need 16 core courses. They're going to look at grades. You need to work as hard as possible to get the best grades possible. And you want to meet with your high school counselor often, because your high school counselor has the list of the approved core courses. And this is crucial. If you start, you want to take, there's some classes that are awesome, but they're not approved, like some of the math classes. Even your high school, I think Scott's told me before, every high school student needs an arts requirement. The arts requirement is not NC2A approved at most high schools. So you need to meet with your high school counselor often and make sure, I can't stress that enough. And you guys are really lucky being in this district. These high school counselors know so much about the NC2A. Working at Santa Barbara City College, I get student athletes from all over the United States, and they don't have a clue. Their high school counselors are like, what's the NC2A? What's the eligibility center? So we are really lucky in this town. All these high school counselors know all about the NC2A rules. So I can't stress that enough, that you need to meet with your high school counselor often. Okay. Juniors. So the beginning of your junior year, you should register with the Eligibility Center. There's going to be a slide in here about showing the Eligibility Center. When you sit down, your student to take the SAT or the ACT, put in the code 9999 and your score will automatically get sent to the NC2A. Otherwise, you're going to have to go back to the College Board and have them sent there. So take the SAT or the ACT, even if you know you're going to a community college, just because you'll see later, it'll help you transfer even from a community college. Like I said, this last year, they didn't require an SAT or an ACT, the Eligibility Center didn't, but we don't know going forward what's going to happen with that. Okay, and make sure your courses that you're taking are matching your high school's list of approved core courses. That's why I can't stress enough to meet with your counselor, because they know what core courses you need to be taking. And it doesn't line up necessarily. You can't say like, oh, I'm UC eligible, so I'm NC2A eligible, because they're not the exact same thing. All right, so after your junior year, you're going to send your official transcript to the Eligibility Center. Your counselors know how to upload that to the Eligibility Center, so that's why you need to meet with your counselor. And they'll give you an initial, it's kind of initial, the end of your junior year, but the end of your senior year is when your final transcript has to be there. Okay, so before your senior year, you need to check with your counselor to determine the number of core courses still needed to be completed your senior year. You need 16, remember. All right, Spencer. All right, so the NC2A will accept SAT or ACT scores from different tests. So let's say you take an SAT and you did better in the math this time, and then you take it again and that time you did better in English. They are going to pick and choose, and they will take your best scores. They'll match them up. So they'll take, your best score from March in English and your best score from math, maybe in June. So you can take the test more than once, and they will use your best scores from different sections. Same thing with the ACT. Continue taking the core courses, continue meeting with your high school counselor to make sure you're on track to take core courses that are approved. Earn the best grades possible, because there is a sliding scale with your GPA and your SAT scores. You have to graduate on time. So you won't be ever considered a qualifier out of high school if you graduate, your high school graduation is June 8th, but you're missing a core class and you need to take it in the summer. That will automatically determine that you're a non-qualifier out of high school and cannot get a scholarship to go to a D1 school. Okay. So, eligibility center. All right, they waived the SAT for fall 2020. The graduating class that graduated last June, the eligibility was only based on the 16 core courses and the GPA. There's a sliding scale that the NC2A uses to determine your eligibility for a Division I or Division II scholarship. So the higher your GPA, the lower your SAT score can be, and vice versa. So the NC2A understands some students are really good in the classroom. Sometimes they're not such good test takers. So they use this sliding scale for that reason. Some kids are totally burnt out on high school. But they're really smart and they can test really well. So then they'll use that. So the sliding scale is on the NC2A website. And I think Spencer has the new one and it'll be uploaded to the website as well. So you can see the sliding scale. You used to only have to have a 2.0 to go to a D1 school out of high school. And that's been raised to a 2.3. Okay. Spencer. All right, so core course completion on time. That means from the time that you enter the 9th grade, you have 4 years to get the 16 core courses done. That means, like I said, you can't be finishing one of your core courses in June in summer school because you didn't do it. You only had 15 when you graduated. You need to have the 16 core courses done on time. So you graduate on June 1st, your core courses have to be done by that time. All right, so for Division I, the 16 core courses are 4 years of English. Fortunately, in California, you have to have 4 years of English to graduate. 3 years of mathematics, and it has to be Algebra 1 or higher. Excuse me. 2 years of science. One has to have a lab. So a natural physical science, 1 year of additional English, math, or science. So if you only took 3 years of math, then your additional year could be in math. If you only did 3 years of science or 2 years of science, you could take extra science classes. Everybody needs 2 years of social science and then 4 additional years of other courses, foreign language, philosophy, non-doctrinal religion. So some private schools in town, Bishop, if it has to be non-doctrinal. So some like the Life of Jesus wouldn't count. So Division I schools, these are the 16 core courses that have to be done, like I said, by the time you graduate. There's a handout for the sliding scale, like I told you about the GPA. The higher the GPA, the lower the scores can be, and vice versa. So basically, I've seen high school GPAs with, you had a 3.5 or above. the SAT score could be really low. I mean, it was like a 400 or something, like a 200 on math and a 200 in English or something. It was pretty low. So work hard to get the highest grades possible, especially if you know you're not a very good test taker. So then they're going to look at the sliding scale, your high school GPA, and then your SAT score could be lower. Okay, next, Spencer. So that there is a new sliding scale for Division I that you must complete 10 core courses before your senior year. So what the NCAA was finding, that students weren't taking, high school serious, and then, their senior year, they grew, 5 inches and put on 40 pounds of muscle. And now all of a sudden, coaches want them, but they didn't take their academics serious. So they were scrambling and taking a bunch of core courses and taking online classes. And so the Division I said that those students that had to do that didn't tend to do very well at the D1 level. And remember, your GPA matters because a coach is scholarshiping you, and they will lose scholarships. If they take a chance on a student who is barely eligible, they're taking it's a long shot. I mean, they're putting, and a lot of times they don't do it. I tell my students at Santa Barbara City College all the time, the first thing a coach does is ask me for a student's transcripts. They can see all the film in the world. You could have the best film, but if you don't get it done in the classroom, it's really hard for D1 and D2 coaches to take a chance on you. So we can't stress enough. That's why at your high school, you're called a student athlete. You're a student first, an athlete second, right? So you got to take the athletic part serious. 7 of those 10 classes, oh wait, let me go back. Yeah, 7 of the 10 classes have to be math, English, and science. So the 10 that have to be done before your senior year, 7 of those have to be in core classes. And the sliding scale, like I said, it used to be a 2.0 to go to a Division I, and now it's a 2.3. So you can't compete at a D1 school with a 2.0 GPA anymore out of high school. Okay. All right. So the core courses for Division II changed too. You have to have 16 core courses, then 3 years of English, 2 years, everyone's gonna have 4 years of English, so there's your extra class. 2 years of math, has to be Algebra 1 or higher. 2 years of science, so they used to, and 3 years of additional English math, so they changed to be just like the Division I school. You used to only need 14 core courses for D2. So a lot of times that's how students got, like they maybe weren't eligible for Division I because they didn't have 16 core courses, but they had 14 core courses so they could go to a D1 school. They have changed now. Division II is now 16 core courses as well. You need 2 years of social science. You need 4 years of additional courses, the same thing, foreign language, comparative religion. Usually high school students probably take 2 years of foreign language because of needing that for the UC system. We'll talk about Santa Barbara City College. I know a lot of your students dual enroll with City College. A City College class is not worth 1, it's worth 0.5. So you need to meet with your high school counselor when you're doing dual enrollment classes, because you don't want to get stuck at the end of your senior year. You might be UC eligible, but you only have 15.5 core courses because of the 0.5 dual enrollment class you took at City College. So basically, you're going to take 1 class, you're trying to get to 16 core courses, you'll take a second one. But your high school counselors know all those rules, and that is why you need to meet with them often. We can't stress that enough, how often you need to meet with your high school counselor if you want to go on and compete at a 4-year school and you're also taking dual enrollment classes. All right, next. Okay, Division III, you don't have to register even with the NCAA for Division III. They don't require it. You're admitted based on your GPA. You get financial aid from FAFSA. And if you get admitted, then you're eligible to compete there. If you have the GPA, you're eligible there. Sometimes the GPA is higher. I know, like Cal Lutheran, they're a Division III school, but you can't even get in without a 2.75. So they have other very specific rules for admissions, and then you would be able to compete there. And like we said, there's no scholarships, there's no athletic scholarships for Division III, but they do accept FAFSA, and they have a lot of merit. They have merit money, merit scholarships. All right. So if you do all those things, the NC2A, you graduated from high school, the 16 core courses, you graduated on time. Your high school graduation was June 10th. You were done with your 16 core courses by then. You had the GPA in your core classes. You met the SAT or the AT score, SAT or ACT score. Then you're considered a qualifier, and you can go to a Division I school, practice, play, receive financial aid right out of high school. So that's the NC2A is the only one that can determine if you're a qualifier or non-qualifier. You might meet with your high school counselor, and I meet with students all the time. I can say, you look like you're a qualifier. These are 16 core courses. The NC2A is the only body that certifies whether you're a qualifier or not. That's why you need to register your junior year. Start registering with the NC2A. Okay, so you're considered a non-qualifier if you didn't graduate from high school, or you didn't graduate on time, you didn't get the GPA lined up with the SAT score, then you're considered a non-qualifier, and you can't practice or play or receive financial aid with a D1 school at that point. This is actually, I mean, we've had a lot of amazing athletes come to Santa Barbara City College because they were a non-qualifier out of high school and they weren't going to get that scholarship. So they came to Santa Barbara City College from New Jersey and New York, and we have students come from all over to come play football at Santa Barbara City College, or baseball, because you've seen our campus. It's beautiful. It's overlooking the ocean. So why wouldn't you, right? So, all right. So this is where you are going to create an account with the NC2A Eligibility Center. And like I said, your high school counselors will help you with this. Once you set up an email and a password, you're going to get a number. Your NC2A number will be your number forever. So if you even if you started signing up with them your freshman year, by the time your senior year rolls around and you're sending in your final transcript and SAT scores, your ID number is your ID number. That NC2A ID number will be yours always. If you got it in high school and you came to Santa Barbara City College, that's still your number. You play for us for 2 years, you go on to a D1 school, that is still your ID number. Okay. This is, you're going to create an account. You're going to send your SAT scores and transcripts. The 999 code would send your SAT or ACT scores directly to the NC2A. That's why I would create an account before you take an SAT or an ACT, so it matches up, because otherwise their NC2A is going to have this score sitting out here in no man's land because there's no student to match it up with. So you want to create an account anyway. Even if you haven't sent in your transcripts, when you go to sit for an SAT or an ACT, make sure you at least have created an account with the NC2A, because then your scores will sit there and they will be there. They'll be there 2 years later. They'll sit there, and your scores will always be there. Students have come to Santa Barbara City College, and we looked up, they pulled up there was their high school information, their SAT scores. They can show me, yep, I was a qualifier out of high school. So you need to do that. The request amateurism certification This will be available during your senior year of high school. You need to update this a lot. So I tell students when they come to Santa Barbara City College, be careful. You need to update your amateurism every year when you play somewhere else. We had an international student come to Santa Barbara City College and play for us. He signed up with NCAA, did everything. He was going home back to England, and he had gotten a scholarship. He went and played on a really high level team in Europe, and it was considered semi-professional. The NCAA, the school that he was going to transfer to, found out. I mean, obviously you have to update your amateurism, and he was denied his scholarship. He couldn't go there because he was considered a semi-pro athlete. So be careful. Be careful where you play. When you're not in high school, you don't want to ruin your eligibility to be an athlete in college by playing. And we've seen it with soccer players, mostly because there's a lot of high level soccer, and some students travel and they go to Mexico and they go to Europe to play soccer. So you want to be very careful about that. I would contact the NCAA before doing something like that. Okay. All right, this is what it's going to look like. You can see up there, there's in the corner, NC2A ID number. It belongs to this student. It will belong to him forever. He's a football player. He will eventually have, where it says Division I and Division II, it's been covered up. It will say there, final qualifier or non-qualifier. So this is where a student, when they update their status, will get their information. Okay, so these are the things it's going to ask you. You're going to fill in an intro, your coursework, schools. Some school, if a student has moved to multiple schools, they're going to have to put in all their schools there. This is all, your student athlete will come across all these things when they're filling out at the eligibility center. And your high school counselors are there to help with this. All right, so this is what it will look like. This football player needs their final amateurism requested. So there's always a button on there. They click on it and they request amateurism. This student is certified. They're a final qualifier. So they are eligible to go directly from high school to a D1 or a D2 school, get a scholarship. They can get money, they can practice, they can play right away because they're called a final qualifier. If it said non-qualifier, I've seen them where it said non-qualifier for Division I, but qualifier for D2, that student is only eligible to go D2 with a scholarship and get money and compete right away. You can sit out a year. If they got into a school, a D2 school, and they just wanted to attend there, they weren't a qualifier, that means that coach can't recruit them, that coach can't give them any money. What they can do is attend that school, sit out a year, and then try to walk on to that school. Most students want to know that they're going to be on a team. They're not going to take their chance to go unless it's a school that they really want to go to anyway. Okay, so initial eligibility overview. So update athletic participation often. So this is that club, the amateurism. Anytime you participate in any events outside your normal high school season, like your club sports, you need to meet often with your high school counselor. You want to protect your amateurism. Like I said, we had a student that didn't get a scholarship because he played in Europe. He played soccer. So, he thought he was playing on a club team. It was a high level club, semi-pro club. So you want to be very careful. Check with I don't even let student athletes that are at Santa Barbara City College play in beach volleyball tournaments where there's money to be had, just because unless they call the NC2A and find out if it's okay, just because anytime there's money in sporting events, you could risk amateurism. All right, so these are the questions you always want to ask. They're amateurism red flags. You don't want to sign a contract with a professional team, receive money for participation. The prize money is above and beyond necessary expenses. So we had a student athlete from Carpinteria. He was amazing. He won every single race in town, from triathlons to, fun runs. But a lot of them had money at the end. There was a $500 prize for coming in first in fun runs in Santa Barbara. Who knew? And he had to turn down. He never accepted any money because he didn't want to jeopardize his amateurism, which is good because he went on and competed at a 4-year school. But that could, accepting money in races in town, like I said, beach volleyball tournaments. So you just want to be very careful. And if you really want to do that, I would call the NCAA and ask them directly, and tell them, I'm going to play in this beach volleyball tournament and there's a $1,000 prize, and find out what they say. Golf tournaments, a lot of golf tournaments, there's money. And I know that an athlete did call and they could accept a sleeve of balls and they could get something else, but they couldn't accept money for winning the golf tournament. So, so it's receiving money for participating. So I can't stress enough, check, just always ask before you act. Okay. All right. So these are important terms for college eligibility. And I go over this with student athletes that come to Santa Barbara City College because I want them to know. And if your student is planning on coming to Santa Barbara City College and participating, you need to know these rules as well. So a student athlete plays 1 second of one game, it counts as a season of participation. So remember, you can only participate for 2 years at the lower level. So you come to Santa Barbara City College, you have 5 years to play 4 times. You're gonna compete for 1 second at Santa Barbara City College, and that used your entire year of eligibility. So it's always a conversation to have with a coach about, we'll go into red shirt, medical red shirt, gray shirt, that if it's looking like you're the 5th string quarterback or the 10th string quarterback, you might not want to play. Because you could play for 3 seconds and use your entire season of eligibility. And then you have 1 more season at community college to participate. It's not a scrimmage. Scrimmages don't count against you, but if it's an official game and there's refs during competition, then it counts as a season of competition. I have to tell you, we had a football player that hadn't played all year, and he went in game 7 thinking he was going to play the next 3 or 4 games. He ran 1 play back and the coach never put him in again. I mean, he was going in for someone that was hurt. And he lost an entire year of eligibility because he played for 10 seconds of one game or 30 seconds of one game. So I always, and it's not always a coach's fault. They're standing on the sideline and it's in the middle of the game and they're excited and they send somebody in. And the player has not played all year. That's where sometimes players have to say, like, coach, don't put me in, I haven't played yet, I want to save my year of eligibility. So you just have to know the rules and stand up for yourself as a student athlete. So you play 1 second of one game, you've used a year of eligibility. A red shirt, so a lot of times a player and a coach will sit down and say, I'm the 10th string quarterback, I'm in a red shirt this year, meaning the coach knows, you're never going to play. The coach is never going to put you in the game. You're an athlete, you're enrolled full-time, but you don't play. There's a gray shirt, maybe it's on the next slide, but a gray shirt is somebody who doesn't play. They know they're not going to play. They don't want to start their Division I clock, so they're not a full-time student. So a medical red shirt is different than a red shirt. A medical red shirt is you got injured during a very specific time of a season, and the trainer and the doctor agree you're out for the rest of the season. You fill out paperwork with the trainer and the doctor, then you get that year back. It happens, I always use football as an example. You have a 10-game season. You have to have gotten hurt in the first half of the season, so before game 5, to get a medical red shirt. But then you get that year back. So that doesn't count against you. So you played, remember I said if you played in a game, it counts as your year of eligibility. You get a medical red shirt, you get that year back. So you have your medical red shirt year, and then you also have a second year. Okay, there's always questions about that. But, and a gray shirt is if you don't enroll full-time and you don't start your clock. So that's different than a red shirt. All right, so financial aid. There are no such things as 4-year athletic scholarships. They're all awarded by the NCAA, and they're limited to 1 year and renewable each year. So they could be reduced, they could be withdrawn. We end up with baseball players all the time. I don't know why UCSB, they overextend their, they have a lot of guys there. They cut them, or the guy loses their partial scholarship, and so they come to Santa Barbara City College. We've had more baseball players from UCSB come to City College because there's no such thing as a 4-year scholarship. Okay, they're renewed each year. So depending on how you're doing, depending on academics, it depends on a whole lot of things, but they're renewable each year. I use my daughter as an example. She got a scholarship to play water polo at a D1 school in Pennsylvania, and it was a private school, and it was $70 grand a year to play. She got a ton of money year 1, but I was thinking, okay, because I knew the rules. If you don't play well, maybe you're not such a good water polo player there back east where it's freezing. So we were like, we can't afford a $70,000. If you lose your scholarship, then you're most likely going to have to leave that school. So as parents, you get all excited that your child got a scholarship to go to a D1 school. You just have to know that it's not, they don't have it for all 4 years. So make sure it's where they really want to be, and that you can also afford to pay. If something happened and your child got hurt and they couldn't play anymore, can you afford that tuition there? Okay, because there's no 4-year scholarships. And they all range differently. Some are, just books. Some are full scholarship, tuition, board, everything. Some are just tuition. You have to pay your own room and board. So they come in all various sizes. All right, so a qualifier versus a non-qualifier at the community college. Why you want to be a qualifier, even if you plan on coming to Santa Barbara City College, because you can be recruited after 1 full-time semester. If you had 12 units of transferable credits, you had a GPA of a 2.5, the Division I only uses 2 units of PE towards that. And you'll have more than that of PE credits at community college. You can go after 1 semester. So you'll meet with counselors, non-athletes, anybody else has to have 60 units. Your student comes from Dos Pueblos High School, comes to Santa Barbara City College, wants to go to UCSB. They're not an athlete. They can't go without 60 units. So this is a student that is a qualifier, and a Division I coach recruits them and gets them into their campus with the NC2A rules, under the NC2A. So they basically have to flag them to get them in, because transfer students need 60 transferable units to go to a 4-year school, a UC or a Cal State, except for if you're an athlete and a coach really wants you. We had a local student that came to Santa Barbara City College. He was a tennis player, and tennis is in the spring at City College. He had 12 units in the fall, because it's 12 transferable per full-time term. He had 12 in the spring, so he only had 24 units, and the coach at UCSB recruited him, and he went to UCSB as an athlete, as a qualifier at a high school with only 24 transferable units. So that's why, even if you know you're going to come to Santa Barbara City College, be a qualifier at a high school. It's going to help you even at the community college level. So get the best grades, take the 16 core courses, be registered with the NCAA. You don't know, you might come to Santa Barbara City College and be the best soccer player we've ever seen and get a scholarship after one semester. But the only way you can do that is if you're a qualifier at a high school. Okay. So Division II is a little bit different. It's a little easier. You can be recruited after one full-time term, earn an AA degree, which means you stayed for 2 years, or have an average of 12 transferable per full-time term. So you were there for 3 semesters. Usually, when I'm meeting with a student, I will put you on a path. I meet with every student athlete to get an AA degree anyway, because when you'll see in the next slide, if you're a non-qualifier, you have to have an AA degree. So I assume every student that comes to me at City College is a non-qualifier until they sit in my office and show me their NC2A ID that they're a qualifier. And then we don't necessarily have to have you on the path to get an AA. But Division II is a little easier. For Division I, you have to have a 2.5 from Santa Barbara City College. For Division II, the GPA is still a 2.2, so it's a little bit lower. I've had students that came to Santa Barbara City College, they did everything right, they got an AA degree, and they just couldn't get their GPA above, they had a 2.4 GPA, so they could not go to a Division I school because the GPA was a 2.5. So then they got a Division II scholarship. So the GPA matters at City College too. I tell students all the time, you've got to keep your GPA up. High school, it matters. You come to Santa Barbara City College, 2.5 is what we're striving for. And we're striving for above that because coaches, like I said, they always ask me, please send me so-and-so's transcript. And if they're only at a 2.5, like they're barely eligible, they're gonna have a hard time scholarshiping a student that's like right on the border of being eligible. So Division II is a 2.2, Division II, yeah, and a Division I is a 2.5 GPA. All right, Division III, you have to have been considered academically and athletically eligible if you stayed at your 2-year school. You have to get in through admissions, and you can get scholarships based on merit. My son played water polo at Cuesta, and he went to Division III school. He went to Cal Lutheran to play water polo. And because he had over a 3.0 GPA from community college, he got $20,000 in merit scholarships to go there. So they don't have any athletic money, but they do offer usually a large amount of merit scholarships. So don't rule out Division III, especially if you're a good student. Okay, where are we at? Okay, so non-qualifier. So for Division I, so I don't want high school students to get stressed like, oh, I can't, I'm never going to go to a D1 school. If you're a non-qualifier at a high school, let's say you didn't have a very good GPA and you didn't do very well on the SATs, you can still come to Santa Barbara City College and go to a Division I school. You're just considered a non-qualifier and you have to get an AA degree with us, which means you can't leave after one semester, even if you're the best athlete in the world. You're a non-qualifier. You need an AA. All of our AAs are 60 units, and 48 of those 60 must be transferable to that 4-year school. Okay? You must have a 2.5. You must have 6 units of transferable English on our campus at City College. That's English 110 and English 111. You need 3 units of transferable math. So any of our transferable math classes, statistics, college algebra, any of those count. And then you need 3 units of science. So all of those, you need science anyway for our AA degree. So I will meet with a student athlete every semester. Make sure you're on track. You're a non-qualifier. That's fine. Let's make sure you're getting an AA degree. you're taking the right classes at Santa Barbara City College. So I never want students to think all is lost. Like, I didn't do very well in high school, I can never play at a four-year school. That is not true. You didn't do well in high school and you're a really good athlete. You come to Santa Barbara City College, you play for us for 2 years, you get your AA, you go on and you still have 2 years to compete at a four-year university. So you compete with us 2 years and you still have 2 years and get a scholarship as a non-qualifier at a high school. So even though we stress do as well as you can in high school, if something happens, you don't do well, you come to Santa Barbara City College, you follow the rules of transfer students at a community college as a non-qualifier, you still can go on to a D1 school with a scholarship. Okay. So Division II non-qualifier, you need to complete 2 semesters and earn an AA degree. If you're eligible, I don't need to go over this. So if you're eligible for Division I, you're going to be eligible for D2. So we always, whenever I'm working with a student athlete, we strive for the top. We strive for Division I. And if it doesn't work out, then we make sure you're eligible for D2. The GPA is lower. You do need the 6 units of English. So our English 110, 111, you need a transferable math class, and you do need a science class. So for Division II, you're still going to get an AA if you're with us. So we're going to make sure, I'm going to make sure that you're Division I eligible as well as D2 eligible. It's just easier to go to a D2 school. The GPA is lower. Division III, you don't register with the eligibility center, so you're not a non-qualifier or a qualifier. You just have to be academically and athletically eligible to go there. So you have to get in on your own, do their own admissions. There's no coaches that can flag a student at a D3 school to get them in, do admissions, like there is like for Division I schools. All right. Okay, so this is where Division I, if you're a 424, we get at Santa Barbara City College a lot of bounce backs. Like I said earlier, your kid wants to go, they can't wait to get out of town. They don't want to go to Santa Barbara City College, even though everything's paid for. They go to a 4-year school, no intention of competing there. Then they come back to Santa Barbara City College because they were at a 4-year school, come back to a 2-year school, and if they want to go play at another 4-year school, they must get an AA with us. It doesn't matter if they were a qualifier at a high school or not at that point. So at that point, once you go to a 4-year school, your qualifier, non-qualifier status doesn't matter. You have to get an AA with us. You have to complete 12 transferable units per full-time term. You have to have a 2.5 GPA, and 1 calendar year has to have elapsed at that 4-year school unless you go back to the same 4-year school. But if your student was at a school, a 4-year school, and they came back to us, they're going to be with us probably longer than a year anyway. They're going to be there at least a year to finish an AA degree with us. Remember, all our AA degrees are 60 units. We can use units from other schools towards the AA, but we'll make sure that your student that wanted to get out of town and they came back here because they missed their sport, well, I will make sure that they get an AA degree at Santa Barbara City College, because at that point they will have to have one if they went to any 4-year school, whether they competed or not. That doesn't matter. If they attended any 4-year school, they now have to have an AA degree from us. Okay, we're winding down, I think. Okay, so a qualifier that's a 424, for Division II, you don't have to have an AA, but you do have to have 12 transferable per full-time term. So like I said, I'm going to make sure that you're get an AA so that you're eligible for Division I, because you never know what's going to happen after playing at Santa Barbara City College and leaving us. So I am going to make sure that you have an AA degree. You don't have to have one for D2, but I want you to be eligible for a Division I scholarship as well. All right, so this is one rule that is very confusing, and I'm not gonna, I talk to students about it all the time. It's called the 40, 60, 80% rule, and it's for Division I athletes only. It's a progress towards degree requirement. So for a student that attended somewhere and didn't play, they were a full-time student at ASU. They came back to Santa Barbara City College and had 2 years to play. That's 3 years of full-time enrollment. A student would need, after 6 full-time terms, they would need 60% of their degree requirements met. So at the end of 3 years, most degrees are 120 units. We use like UCSB, a regular degree is 120 semester units, 180 quarter. That 60% is 72 to 74 units. That's a problem. If you transfer from Santa Barbara City College to any UC or Cal State, they're only going to accept 70 max. So you're already not eligible to compete there. So this is why when you are in high school, you meet with your high school counselor a lot, all the time. When you come to Santa Barbara City College, you must meet with me all the time because I want to make sure that you're eligible. And a student would have to under-enroll one of their terms with us. You cannot be a full-time student for 3 years and go Division I. It will make you ineligible to go to a D1 school. So you always have to under-enroll one of your semesters at City College. So a lot of times it's normal to be at City College for 3 years. You're a biology major, you're an engineering major. I mean, it's really common to be at City College for 3 years. We will just have to make sure that you're under-enrolled one of your terms so that you're still Division I eligible, if that's the goal, to go on and play at a D1 school. And that rule, I talk to students until I'm blue in the face, and I make sure that those students understand this, because this is what would mess up a student from City College. They redshirt 1 year and they play 2 years, which is also very common. It's very common to be at City College for 3 years, especially when the promise is paying for 2 of those 3 years, right? But if that's going to be the case, students must under-enroll one of their terms. All right, so the first season at City College, so you have to be actively enrolled in 12 units. 9 of those have to be academic. At City College, you get 3 units of PE to be like your football classes, 3 units of PE. So that counts towards your eligibility. You have 9 units of academics at least. There's your 12 units your first term. I teach a class called PD 140, College Success for Student Athletes, which goes over all these rules. I didn't get to teach it this year because we're working remotely. So I'm doing individual meetings like this with all 400 athletes at City College. But normally I go over all these rules in a college success class, PD 140. It's a 1 unit Cal State transferable class. So hopefully by your time your students get to Santa Barbara City College, I'll be teaching that class again. We do comprehensive ed plans in that class, so your student knows exactly what they need for their major. And then I meet with students every semester as well. Before they can compete in a second time, so they compete for us in fall, they play football. Before they can compete a second season, they have to pass 24 units. 18 of those have to be academic with a 2.0. And we've had people not eligible. They had a 1.99 GPA with us. That is not a 2.0, so they are not eligible. But remember, if you're a fall sport, you compete in fall, you have spring to make up units to get eligible. You also have summer. So summer is a freebie semester. In City College, we have 2 summer school sessions. So it's, I mean, if I catch a student or they come to see me, I can make sure that they pass the 24 units in 18. If I As long as they make an appointment to see me, I will catch that on their transcript and tell them, uh-oh, you have to go to summer school because you don't have 24 units that you passed. All right. All right, so NAIA, don't ever rule out NAIA. They have a lot of athletic money. They have 14 different sports. I always use Westmont as an example. Westmont is expensive to go there, but they do have athletic money. I went to an NAIA conference one time, and I was told that they have $450 million a year in athletic scholarships that they give to students. So, and the semi-pro, you know, if you played, so that student that I was telling you about, the soccer player, he actually went to an NAIA school because he lost his Division I scholarship. But NAIA schools don't have that. If you played with a semi-pro team, they won't deem you and kick you out of their sport. So that's why there's some really high levels of athletics at NAIA schools. So I would say don't rule out NAIA as an option. All right, so you have to meet 2 of the 3 criteria. So a minimum of 860 on an SAT or 18 on an ACT, finish in the top half of your graduating class, maintain a 2.0. And like we said, it's NAIA, they're different. Like Westmont has, you know, you have to have a pretty high GPA to even get in, to be admitted to Westmont. So if you were admitted to some of these NAIA schools, I'm assuming that you would be able to compete there. Okay, you register with the NAIA clearinghouse. It's not that they're not run by the NC2A. They have their own eligibility center, and it's NAIA clearinghouse. Talk to your high school counselors about that. They're there to help, and they know about all those. All right, your counselor can help. If you're interested in college sports, talk with your counselor now. So make an appointment, whatever high school you're at. Make sure your high school counselor knows that you want to compete at a 4-year school. They can upload your transcripts to the NC2A. They'll remind you about SAT, ACT. We don't know yet if your student is a senior this year. We don't know if they're going to be tests in March or June. We don't know yet. I mean, so if they didn't take them earlier, the NC2A this year will find out. They may use just the GPA and the 16 core courses. The SAT won't be part of that, just the GPA will. If you are eligible for free or reduced lunch, you're also eligible for an NC2A waiver, because there was a slide there that it showed how expensive it is. It's like 90 bucks now, I think, or $100. I think it was 75 when my kids registered, but it's gone up. I think it's close to $100 now. So talk to your high school counselor about the NC2A waiver. All right, so this is what you do now. 9th grade, take your core classes, pass with C's or better, but get the highest GPA possible. Meet with your high school counselor. 10th grade, you register with the eligibility center. 11th grade, you're going to take your SAT or ACT and submit the scores to NC2A. You do the code 9999 and you're registered with the eligibility center. In 12th grade, you take your SAT, ACT again, take it as many times as you want. Remember I said that NC2A is going to use your best scores, and they will pick and choose from different tests. They will always give the student the benefit of the doubt. So you had a better score in 10th grade than you did in 11th grade, they'll use your 10th grade score. So they'll use your best scores from all the different tests. Request final eligibility. At the end of your senior year, you will have to have your final transcript sent to the eligibility center, because they need to see graduation dates. So your graduation date is on there, and they will see that you graduated, you didn't have to take any classes in the summer to get your degree. That's how they determine if you're a qualifier or not. All right. And there we go. We are done. So now if anybody has any questions, I will stick around.
Well, Joanne, we want to thank you so much. We do have some questions that came in the chat, but we really just appreciate you so much for doing all that. As you can all see as parents and as student athletes who are out there right now, it is a complicated process, but there is a lot of help and support. The sooner you identify yourself as a student athlete that wants to play at the NCAA level, the sooner we can help you. And so obviously, you know, by 10th grade, it's pretty easy to help you. As a counselor, I can tell you trying to help 11th graders is more challenging, and trying to help 12th graders is the most challenging part. And I understand there's a lot of growth that happens physically and emotionally and mentally in your capability. And I know sometimes it hurts that the 9th and 10th grade year can really harm you. So that's why we try and kind of do this every year. We want to reach out to the youngest students. We want to kind of make sure that they understand that the sooner you're thinking that I'm a student athlete, the better. I love Joanne's analysis. You have to be a student first, otherwise you're never going to get on the field. So you do need to be a student athlete. So we do have some questions. Lisa, do you want to read off some of the questions that came in, and then we can share those about, and then make sure that people feel like those questions were answered? Please don't use the chat. Do your best to please use the question and answer field.
Yes, so I'm going to read off the ones that we weren't able to answer. Somebody asked early on, is this only for Division I and II? And I know that you also covered Division III, so I think that's the answer. Is that correct?
Yep.
And we covered NAIA.
NAIA. Yep.
Right, that's right. And then we had another question about the quarter system that we answered, but just to clarify, any classes taken on a block schedule, 1 quarter equals a semester at a non-block school. So the first term that just got completed would be considered semester 1 for a senior filling out the paperwork.
The other one
And I think, yeah, go ahead.
The other one I saw was our all academic classes, core classes, and not necessarily. So we have to submit all of our courses, and the NC2A has to approve courses. So there are courses that we do have at the school that seem very academic, and they do not count for the NC2A. So I think one of my biggest examples of the challenge is we have a film studies class that is counted as an English class by four-year colleges. So if you were to take film studies on top of your other English classes, you would have extra English credit. And the NC2A refuses to acknowledge or recognize a film studies class, even though it's giving English credit, and even though the college itself, like UCLA, would accept it as a film studies English class. The NC2A does not accept it as one of the 16 core classes. So it is a complicated system. I always tell the students and to parents, if you follow the simple rule of 4 each year of just the generic regular academic classes, then you're going to be safe. As soon as you start doing city college classes and dual enrollment classes and trying to have other things count for other things, it doesn't become impossible, but it's not as simple. So students used to take world history as for 1 semester at city college, and that used to count for a full year. And then but it only counted as half a class for the NC2A. So even though the college recognized it as a full year course, the NC2A gave you a half a point, not a full point for that same course. So again, there are a lot of things that you do need to know about. That's why we are here. I appreciate Joanne referring you to us. We want to make sure that you have the right information and that we help you to the best of our ability. Other questions you saw, Lisa?
I think we got all of them, but if anyone wants to type in another one, we can read it off.
Okay, I see somebody asking us, do we still need to take the ACT absent SAT since some schools aren't requiring it?
Okay, so
go ahead.
it's okay. So the UC system, they're not requiring it. The NC2A is not the UC or the Cal State system, so you can't confuse those. Just like the 16 core courses, you could get admitted to UCSB and not be eligible because the NC2A did not accept your arts class or like the film studies class. So that's why it's so crucial to meet with your high school counselor, because being eligible for a UC is not the same thing as the NC2A. So the NC2A has not told us that UCs, you don't need them this year again. But the NC2A has not said that yet, that they're not using SAT or ACTs. So if you can take a test, if they're open, testing centers are open in March, then you have to take the test if they're open. So yeah, and hopefully your high school counselor all know more when it gets, I mean, the NC2A just hasn't told us yet. They're still trying to figure out their, playing seasons this year.
And then I think let's see if there's another new question. So for the most part, we're saying that it's not going to hurt if you have the opportunity to figure a way to take the test. You probably should take the test. It's not going to hurt you, but there's a possibility that's going to help you. You can never tell. And so that's one of those things that right now we're in kind of a situation where you need to do your best guess of what they may or may not end up deciding to do. Once they announce it, then they'll announce it. So if the testing centers open up, like Joann said, where they might not normally have taken a March test, they may take they may tell you to take the March test. So you do really need to pay attention and follow the NC2A eligibility center. You need to work on the worksheet that's there, keep checking up on that. Like I say to students all the time, once you start registering for any of these opportunities, your email becomes your #1 best friend. You don't want to miss messaging there. That's what they're using. They're not using your social media to kind of give you information. They are expecting you to check your emails and check your portals. So as you are opening up accounts like this, students, it's really important, and parents, you need to hear this. They're not going to send their information to you, parents. They're going to send it to the student, and the student needs to be checking their portals and checking their emails to see about information that may be told to them. So they may get an email telling them that they're accepting March tests, and the student may not be checking their emails to get that information. So it's really important as you're opening up any of these portals that you realize that in the professional world, what's being used is emails. And so I'm just going to also recommend to you students that if you don't have a professional email at this point, that you should have a professional email. People are looking at your email and they are judging you based on the name of your email. So if you want to be toohottotrot@gmail.com, you're probably not going to be considered very high-end professional with that. So just be careful about how you're being judged. So I don't know if I see any other questions.
I don't see any more.
I don't see any more questions coming in. Again, the presentation, again, there was a ton of information. I understand it can be very overwhelming. I watch it every year, and every year I hear something a little bit different. So please take your time to review the slides, see what applies to you and what doesn't apply to you. If you're going straight to a four-year school, if you're going to go to City College, all of those things, it's different what's going to be most important to you. So I just want to make sure that you're kind of paying attention to all of those things. Watch it. It's recorded. You can watch it live, or you can just read all the slides. They'll all be on all of the websites and posted. My guess is by the beginning of next week is when we'll have this all out and up on our websites available for you to kind of watch and see. If there's no other questions, we want to thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate you. I want to do a special shout out to Spencer Barr from Santa Barbara High School. He put together this presentation. He made sure that everything was kind of working for technology, and he did a phenomenal job, and I really appreciate that. I want to thank our interpreters. Hopefully they were okay with all of the information that we were giving so fast and stuff like that. So I just want to appreciate them being here tonight and kind of making sure that all of our parents and students were able to hear and get the information that was needed. So with that being said, thank you all for coming and have a great evening.